A pleasant night, everyone. So today, we're going to lecture on voicing and sound changes. We're going to explore how voicing works in human languages and how different types of sound changes, such as assimilation, devoicing, and limitation, shape the way languages evolves over time. This slide presents the definition of voicing within the field of phonetics. Voicing is a phonetic feature determined by the vibration of the vocal folds during speech production. Voice sounds are produced when the vocal folds vibrate, as in the case of consonants such as B and D. These sounds are fundamental in distinguishing lexical meaning across languages. In contrast, voiceless sounds are articulate without vocal fold vibration, as in P and T. Such contrasts between voiced and voiceless sounds are essentials for establishing phonemic distinctions, thereby playing a crucial role in linguistic communication. On these slides explain the phonetic basis of voicing. So first, we consider the function of the vocal folds. Voice sounds are produced when the vocal folds vibrate as air passes through them, whereas voiceless sounds occur in the absence of such vibration. This psychological difference underlies one of the most fundamental contrasts in spoken language. Secondly, we look at the voice onset time or VOT. VOT refers to the time interval between the release of stop consonant and the onset of vocal fold vibration. This measure is particularly important in distinguishing between voice and voiceless stops consonants, such as the difference between B and P. Vocal form, vibration, and VOT provide the essential phonetic foundation for understanding voices, contrast, and human speech. These slides highlights the types of sound changes that occur in language. In phonology, sound change refers to systematic alterations in speech sounds over a time. Two key processes are assimilations and devoicing. Assimilations occur when a sound becomes more similar to a neighborhood sound, often to facilitate ease of articulation. For example, in some dialects, the phrase in Paris may be pronounced as I'm Paris, where the nasal sounds adapts to the place of articulations of the following consonant. The voicing, on the other hand, involves the loss of vocal fold vibration, turning a voice sound into its voiceless counterpart. For instance, a final B may be realized as T in certain phonological contexts. So understanding this process is essential for analyzing language evolutions, phonological patterns, and the rules of governing sound changes. On this next slide, we're going to talk about final devoicing. So final devoicing is a sound change that happens in some languages like German, Dutch, Polish, and Russian. It means that when a word ends with a voiced consonant like B, D, G, V, or C, it actually pronounced at its voiceless partial like P, T, K, F, or S. For example, in German, the word ab, which means off, it's written with the letter B, but when you say out loud, it sounds more like app. That's because the P at the end loses its voice. This might seem like small detail, but it's really important. If you don't know about final devoicing, it can make word sounds confusing or even change their meaning. For learners of these languages, it shows how pronunciations can be different from spelling and how small sounds difference can matter a lot. So final devoicing is a great example of how languages change sounds at the ends of the words and why paying attention of pronunciation rules is important when learning a new language. This slide is about understanding sound changes. Sound changes are basically the ways in which the pronunciations of words shifts over time or in different situations. They are important because they show us how languages evolve, and they also explain why words in different languages may look similar but sounds different. For example, processes like assimilation and final devoicings are types of sound changes. Assimilations make sounds more alike, and devoicings removes the voice from consonants at the ends of the words. By studying these changes, we can understand the rules behind pronunciations and how languages develop patterns. This is especially helpful for both linguistics, who study language scientifically, and for learners, who need to know why words don't always sound spelled. Now, let's look at voicing neutralizations. Voicing neutralizations happens when the difference between a voice consonants like B, D, G and its voiceless partner like P, T, K disperse in a certain position in a word. In other words, the contrast between voice and voiceless sounds is neutralized. For example, in German, the words Rat or will and the rat advice are both pronounced with a T at the end. Even though one is written with D and the other with a T, this is because the end of the words, the difference between voice and voiceless consonants is lost. This is closely connected to final devoicing because final devoicing is actually one way that voicing neutralizations happens. Understanding voices neutralizations is important because it explains why spelling and pronunciations don't always match and also shows how languages simplify their sound system in certain positions. Lastly, we have the types of sound changes. In linguistics, sound changes are really important because they help us understand how languages develop over time and how different pronunciations patterns appear. Two key processes are assimilations and devoicing. Assimilation happens when one sound becomes more similar to neighboring sounds. For example, in English, when we say input, many people pronounce it more like input because the end changed to match the following P. Devoicing, which is mentioned earlier, is when a voice sounds like B or D turns into voiceless sounds like P or T. often at the end of the word. This is common in languages such as German, Dutch, and Russian. By studying this process, linguistics can track how languages evolve, explain why words are the way they do, and even predict possible changes in the odd feature. That's why understanding sound changes is a key part of phonology. Once again, that's what the meaning of voice and voiceless sounds. I'm Adrikame Escribano from the group BSAD English area. Thank you.